Hello and welcome to this pit stop check of your exam. In this case we're going to focus on the poetry and look at how you might incorporate structure. As part of any exam preparation, you should be practicing essay writing skill and checking you're using the skills the exam would want to see to achieve the grade you want and need for your future. Just like an F1 car, no answer is going to be perfect first time round. That's why you do mock exams to practice your response, check your work afterwards and improve before you hit the actual exam hall on your real assessment date. Here is a copy of the GCSE criteria then for the poetry in this case. You can see there are three things they'd be looking for. You've got your focus on the task, overview, linking to how much you evaluate and understand the poem. Then you've got your use of quotes, linking to the language being used, the form and its structure, making a short reference to meanings and effects, exploring and evaluating the way meaning ideas are conveyed. And lastly, you've got your context in column number 3 or AO3. How much do you know about the poet? How have you linked this to your work, to your response, sorry? How have you used the context or history elements that you've learned before going to the exam to improve the quality and the accuracy of your response? You can see at the bottom there, band 1, top band 5. So this will be out of 25 according to this mark scheme you can see in front of you. Please pause the video at this point, study the mark scheme, and give some thought to what grade you think your responses might get. Now there are many things to look out for in a poetry response that might lower the grade you might otherwise expect. Not making enough points about the character or theme, forgetting some marks are awarded for comments on form or structure, not making clear comment on how a theme develops in a poem as one stanza links to the next, not really explaining the effect of a particular word choice or technique used, not mentioning or linking to writer's message or reasons for writing. Now today we're going to focus on the comments you need to make on form or structure. So what evidence could you give that would count towards structure or form? Well, you could comment on the title of the poem, why it was chosen, why this title links to its overall meaning. You could explain why the first or last line were chosen to begin and end the poem. How do these make clear the message of the poem, perhaps, or what the poem is going to be about? You could clearly reference why rhyme was or was not used, or why or what rhyme scheme the poem actually uses. In your poetry notes on the internet, or indeed in my other videos, you'll find this information, but did you include this in your response? And lastly, have you explained why the lines are cut off the way they are? Sometimes it's referred to as enjambment. This means then that sentences, if they're written in paragraphs, will just continue until they reach the end of the line. In a poem, the poet has deliberately cut or severed those lines in particular places to emphasize their meaning. Let's take the poem The Soldier as an example. We need to start thinking, why is the poem called The Soldier? Why did Brooke choose this first line for his poem? Why did Brooke choose to end the line here after the word field? Why did Brooke choose to have his poem rhyme in this way? Why might it use a sonnet form? This isn't by accident, of course. Brooke is a professional poet who's already made money from it, and either way, he's been given this poem as a GCSE text. So there will be reasons why he made certain decisions. One of the most significant is the sonnet form in this case. Why did Brooke choose to end the poem with this line, particularly ending with the word heaven? And you might notice as you read this poem through that Brooke uses alliteration all the way through. Why does he do this? What effect does it have? All of these are questions you could ask about the structure or form of the poem. So let's look at that first question. Why is the poem called The Soldier? Here's an example response 2 sentences in total, but each one of them clearly explained. Brooke, the name of the poet, calls his poem The Soldier to remind us of the stereotypes connected with soldiers, bravery, strength and patriotism. He makes it sound like the poem is about one man or a particular type of man that links to propaganda shown on wall posters at the time. You can see I've colour-coded this response, the poet's name, the link to the audience in red, my magic 3 or triple threat, so to speak, in blue there, as I make clear I do understand what Brooke's intentions might have been, and you can see in green my link to context. You can see I've deliberately linked all parts of the mark scheme, making sure I use a quote, the title itself, explain how it links to the meaning or message of the poem, and also linked to my knowledge of its context or historical background. Let's now have a look at the second question, linked to structure. Why did Brooke choose this first line? If I should die, think only this of me. Brooke deliberately presents us with an opening line that admits the truth about being a soldier in World War I. If I should die, challenges us to accept the soldier may not return from battle. The tone is immediately soft and intimate, as if Brooke is talking to a loved one, and this is carried on through the whole poem. The word die is almost brutal as the speaker and listener accept the reality of war. There's lots and lots of skills being used here. I've got 2 mentions of the poet's name, Brooke. I've linked to the audience with presents us. I've got my quote from the first line, if I should die. I've got a reference to the tone of voice being used there. And I've also mentioned that this tone carries on through the rest of the poem. And that's my structure element, not only the first line being used, but the tone of voice being chosen as well. You'll notice I've added to that by analysing the line, by looking closely at why Brooke might choose to use the word die. That seems quite heavy-handed, quite full-on compared with the rest of the poem, as if that Brooke wants to make clear that he recognises and expects to die when he goes to World War I, but having said that, he feels that that would be an honourable and good way to die, because it means he can forever be saving his country and shows that he was fighting for a cause he truly believed in. Once again, you can see this answer is fairly short, and I've outlined the different colours, the different skills being used. Now let's look at this example of enjambment. So there's some corner of a foreign field, then the line stops, then the rest of the sentence continues underneath, that is forever England. My question here then is why he'd end that line with corner of a foreign field before moving to the next line down. Here's some sentence starters to get you started. Brooke deliberately uses enjambment after the word field to suggest to us what? Well, what comes to mind when we think of field? What thought, what picture enters our heads? How does it link to the overall meaning of the poem and where the poem was set and what Brooke believed in? If we can explain that, that would go where I put the ... at the end there. I've then added, he wants us to think about, well, why would he put that word near the top of the poem, and so we start thinking about the word field. How does that link to Brooke, where he comes from, or indeed where he's going? If you can answer those questions, that would give you a clear structural comment in your response. We could now also continue to look at the rhyming being used and why the sonnet form is being used. Think about how that links to Brooke himself or his message of his poem. And we still have to look at the alliteration being used through the whole poem. What effect does it have? In this case, I've highlighted laughter learnt, and that's one example of many in this poem. Think of the letters being used in the alliteration. What sound do they make? Do they make the poem sound softer, harsher, whispered, or shouted? And how might that link to the overall meaning of the poem as a whole? Again, that would count as a structural comment. Now let's take a look at another war poem from the anthology, Wilfred Owen's Dulcet Coram Est. The same principle can apply with this one in thinking about the structure and form of the poem itself. You're going to see a series of questions appear on the right hand side as things you might want to consider when studying this poem. Please take the time to look back at the examples you've already seen and use these questions to form your own structure-based response to the poem. You wouldn't need to answer all of these to gain the marks for structure, but you choose either simply the ones you know, or the ones that are the most interesting, or the most thought-provoking, or the ones that link best to the message of the poem. As we said at the start then, doing well in exams is all about preparation, preparing to succeed using the mark scheme as a basis for your response. Good luck with your further practice and good luck for your poetry GCSE test. All the best. Bye.